welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. Emphasis on the mom part here. It's about 10 o'clock at night on November 10th of 2024. So, not exactly been a fun week. But that is not what we are here to talk about. We're not talking about what's going on in 2024. We're talking about what was going on in the 1960s. In this case, we're going to be talking about from the Earth to the Moon. So this is the third, I believe it's the third of my videos on this. Double check and go back to see where the heck I am. Make sure I'm actually covering what I'm supposed to be. Yes, I'm covering episodes 5 and 6. So, episode 5 is probably so far my favorite. So this is called Spider. So this one kind of does something interesting because right now the episodes have been in chronological order. What this one does is it goes back. It goes back early on to the early parts of the 60s and the granting of basically 7 years before we land. Before things really start getting off the ground. And the granting of the contract to build the lunar module. So it starts off with, okay, how the heck are we going to land on the moon? And there's a lot of different ideas, and it goes over. This random guy comes up with a 2-point idea, which is what eventually it goes with. At first nobody's paying attention, and luck has it people read a report, they pass it on up, they find it interesting, and so we have the situation where how we landed on the moon, where you had a spacecraft that had 2 parts. You had the main module, and then you had the lander, which is called the base, which is called the LM, or the lunar module. Or the lunar, yes, we also call it the lunar lander. And this episode focuses on, and it is told by a man by the name of Thomas J. Kelly. Now I'm opening up, he was an engineer from New York, and he was the lead engineer working on, he originally worked at the company called Grumman, then went to the U.S. Air Force. He was there in the 50s. He went to the U.S. Air Force, and he went to Lockheed. Then he went back to Grumman, and was in the position of assistant chief in propulsion from 1959 to 1960s. Then he was moved to the Apollo and Lunar Module proposals, and he helped develop this. So it focuses on him and building and doing all the stuff that is involved in getting this thing to work over a 7-year period. And of course they gave them a budget, and they're like, yeah, they gave us timelines and a budget. One of the things he says is the problem with timelines and a budget is they're based on things that had been done before. Obviously, nobody had done this before. So it's like we had no clue. We are literally creating things from scratch. So it's kind of interesting. You watch them change different ideas, and they show the model of what they're changing, making windows smaller. It's like, we have 5 legs, we're going to move it to 4 legs. The biggest thing, of course, is, if anybody who knows anything about space, has to do with weight, because you have to get things out of Earth's orbit. And then we kind of catch up to the last couple of episodes where they're talking about these docking, and you're looking at Apollo 7, where that was created in many ways because the lunar module was not ready. And the crew who had been training on it, chose not to take the earlier mission that did various other, that actually went to the moon. We covered that at the last video. And basically, I think one of the guys commented, it's like, at least in the dramatization, that it was like sightseeing. So, and yes, Kendra is in the background. She's usually in here. She is 15 at this point. I just finished watching these. It is 10:08 at night. So, normally I do not film this late. But nonetheless, we are going to. And yes, my hair is a disaster. Again, it's 10 o'clock at night on a Sunday. And I have a kid and have grocery shopping tomorrow. But nonetheless. So this is, so far, Spider is literally my favorite. Because it literally goes through how this is created. And all the trouble and all the different designs. And at one point in time when the team suggested that they get rid of the seats and have them stand, they literally spent the night creating a cardboard cutout to show their boss, this is what it will look like. And so they get rid of something I of course did not know. The lunar module has no seats. So they are standing when they land this thing. Because again, they were trying to make it as light as possible. So the mission that they are focusing on is the first mission where they're going to test to see if this thing works. And they to do like 9 things that nobody has ever done before that include flying this thing. And it's never going to come back. Hold on, cat. So it's very, very interesting. And actually, the guy who's supposed to do one of the spacewalks gets sick, so they're not sure they're going to do it. And he does feel better the next day, so they're luckily able to do this. And because, don't bite me, they did the first 2-manned spacewalk in history. And one of the astronauts ran out of film on his camera. So for 3 minutes, his partner had nothing to do on a spacewalk. And he says, like, this is amazing. I'm going to bring up, because I have, this is Apollo 9. So it was, it was David R. Scott, who was, this was his second space flight, and he was able to do this and have this period of 3 minutes to just stare at the planet. I mean, that's got to be amazing. But that's really the focus, because I did a bunch of stuff on Apollo 9, and you mostly see, most of it is really about building Spider, which is what they called the first lunar module that never actually went to the moon. So this is the first test of it to make sure it works. They can deploy things, it can fly, they can redock to make sure it works. The end of the episode shows them sending off the Eagle, which is the lunar module that will land on the moon. So, and now before this, there was Apollo 10, where was another test flight where they tested the lunar module, Kendra, in moon's orbit before landing. So it ends with basically them saying goodbye to the lunar module that's going to land on the moon. So this has so far been my favorite episode. The next episode is called, I think, I'm going to go jumping into this one. Honestly, this is episode 6. Oh, sorry about that. It's called Mare Tranquilitatis. Okay, I'm not going to pronounce this because it's in Latin. But this is the Apollo 11 mission. So this is them getting to and landing on the moon. So And it's a very interesting episode. You get to see the contrast between the actor who is playing Neil Armstrong in this as compared to in The First Man. And it's very, very different. It's a very, very different vibe and a very, very different personality. Even though you don't see much of Neil Armstrong. Sorry, again, it's 10 o'clock at night. But it's a different vibe completely than First Man. And again, you can check out my review of this. I'm not fond of that movie. There's something off about the tone. I prefer this. It's not that Neil Armstrong's character is happier in this. You see a little bit more of the cockiness, because there's a point where they're training and he intentionally crashes because he waited to see what Houston would do. He was waiting for them to tell him what to do. Now, this is simulations. He'd already aborted missions, during training before this, where they would abort when they're supposed to. He was this irritated Buzz Aldrin. You see a lot of Buzz in this, and how he's older. I'm trying to think. Yeah. Actually, this is not the one I want. I want to go back to Apollo 11. So, jump into Apollo 11. So, you have Buzz Aldrin, who is definitely older, and you see kind of his jealousy when it comes to Neil being the first on the moon. So this is, of course, this is Buzz Aldrin's second and last space flight, which of course it's not, because he goes into space when he is older. But this is everybody's second space flight. So technically, this is why it doesn't list Armstrong's. This is Armstrong's last flight. In fact, it's all of them. They only all do this, and then they're done. So it's kind of interesting to realize that. Of course, Buzz he lands, he goes back, he becomes a senator, and then he decides to go back into space. He convinces them to let him go back into space when he's like in his 60s, which has got to be cool. But you definitely see a lot of Buzz's mild jealousy, and how Armstrong, particularly in this specific scene where after Neil's crashed, Armstrong is talking to Michael Collins, who's the other pilot, and Armstrong comes in, Collins leaves, and he's like, I did this on purpose. I wanted to see what would happen. I had already aborted like 7 or 8 times before this and done it correctly. I wanted to see what was going on. So it's definitely, you see the conflict of wills. Both of them were in the Gemini program, so it's not like either one of them ranked each other, though of course Aldrin was still military when he joined, and Armstrong was not. He was a civilian. So this is a very interesting episode, because you're also seeing it through their Walter Cronkite stand-in, who's doing the interviews and talking to them. And so it's like he'll ask a question and they'll answer, and then they'll jump back to training and such. So it's definitely an interesting format. Honestly, the spider episode was my favorite. I liked that episode better. I just liked the way it flowed with kind of the narrator and the focus on one person kind of telling the story. And it just seemed to fit, even though, of course, there was a bunch of other people involved. But he helped guide the story. So, But both of these episodes are very, very interesting and great. They're both about, I think these guys are still about 50 minutes. Jump into here. Jump into Spider and see how long this is. Yeah, Spider's about 54 minutes long, and then episode 6, which is the Sea of Tranquility in English, is 54. So both of these are interesting. The next episode coming up that I will review, I'll be watching these. You have That's All There Is, which is the Apollo 12. And then we interrupt this program, which is about Apollo 13. So those are episodes 7 and 8. And then we go back to Miles and Miles, which is episode 9, that talks about Alan Shepard and Apollo 14. And Galileo Was Right, which is episode 10. And that's talking about, looks like they're looking through the 15 astronauts and backup crew. No, the Apollo 15 astronauts and the backup crew go through extensive geology training, preparing for their mission. And then you have the last two, which are the original Wives Club, which talks about the wives, obviously, and then the last, La Voyage dans la Luna, which I'm saying is Goodbye to the Moon. So that is it for round 3, from the Earth to the Moon. And it is astonishing. I was doing some calculations. My mother would have been 12 and my father would have been 19, because they both had late fall birthdays. My mother's birthday is December. My father's is in late October. So he would have still been 19. My mother was only 12 at the time of this happened. I will definitely try to remember to talk to my father about his experiences. I wish I could talk to my mom. But if you're familiar with this channel, I did in fact lose my mother suddenly last year. It's been a little over a year and 2 months now. So, since I lost Mom. But nonetheless, we have more to go. We will be working on Diwali, which should be posting. Those are much older videos. I will be trying to get this done. So it's just, it's been a rough week. If you're watching this from the future, you can guess the election was not fun for us. So we're just gonna hold on tight and pay attention to what we have and keep working on it. If you are interested in following the channel, please do leave a positive comment, like and subscribe. I do have a lot. I am going to be, even though I've been kind of iffy lately, next year is in the planning phases, and I'm going to be doing a lot of fairy tale stuff, and just kind of no real plan to do a series in 2025. I don't have time for it right now. My daughter is everywhere. She's 5, and I can only film at night when she's asleep, and she goes to sleep at varying different times, and she's also exhausting. So, so again, like and subscribe, leave a positive comment if you have one. Look forward to more space stuff. Thank you.